The Norfolk City Council to order. This is an open meeting, and right around the corner as you walk in through the door is the actual Open Meeting Act. If you would, we're going to ask that you stand with us for a moment of silence and as well, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Beth.
Rehnquist.
Here.
Lange.
Here.
Merrill.
Here.
Clausen.
Here.
Murin.
Here.
Moaning.
Here.
Faust.
Here.
File.
Here.
Okay, under action items, I'm requesting approval of the consent agenda as provided you.
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
Get that? The motion has been made and seconded for approval. Please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
All right, and as well, approval of the full agenda as presented.
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the full agenda. Again, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
Okay, we have a couple special presentations tonight. And the first one is a proclamation for the month of February 2016 as Joy of Reading Month. And the proclamation reads, Joy of Reading Month, whereas reading is a skill that only gets better with practice and is essential to a child's success in school. And whereas there's more to reading than homework and class assignments, and whereas there are an endless number of fun and interesting books out there waiting to be discovered, and whereas older students can use their influence to encourage younger children to read more, and whereas Norfolk Panther Joy Club members believe that they can make a difference by encouraging their peers and younger students to read more books and thus improve their reading skills. And whereas the City of Norfolk values its young service leaders and their efforts to make a difference in our community by mentoring young readers and promoting catch and release book programs. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Sue Fookman, Mayor of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2016 as Joy of Reading Month in the City of Norfolk, and I encourage all of our citizens to take due note of this observance. I see a group here that I'm going to bet is going to come forward and accept the proclamation. Did Mark skip out on this? Oh, there you are, Mark. I'm sorry, you're hidden. And who are all these young people?
Chase Roberts.
Chase Roberts. You want to tell the group out here who you are? Don't reach out.
Hi, I'm Chase Roberts.
Sean Ferris, Lexi Roberts.
And what grade are you in, Sean? Oh, that's Sean. Okay.
Seventh grade. Sixth.
Sixth grade. I'm sorry, what grade are you in?
8th grade.
Eighth grade.
Sixth grade.
All right. Okay. And what do you have here tonight?
We have books that we read to elementary schools. This one is Let's Go for a Drive by Mo Willems. And we just read to the elementary students so that they have a nice education.
Okay. And do they take the books home or do they belong to you?
They belong.
Do they?
In this case, yeah.
Okay, okay. How about you? What are you reading?
Are you ready to go into my outside?
Absolutely. How about you?
I broke my trunk.
Oh. Well, I thank you for being here tonight, and I think it's you to be commended for taking time and reading to those younger than you. That's a good work. We look forward to seeing you sitting up in the very near future too on this dais as we make decisions. You show your leadership with the young people now, so I'm sure we'll see you again in the future. Mark certainly has a lot to do with this, as always. Thanks, Mark, for what you do. I will tell you, I run into this gentleman all the time because he provides many, many books through his efforts and the efforts of many to many of our schools here in the Norfolk Public Schools, so and the private schools as well. So thanks for what you do, Mark. You want me to
Can I
hand
get a
this?
picture quick?
Yep, and you want to hand this to the kids or?
Doesn't matter.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kim. Nope. Okay, and next is the proclamation for Problem Gambling Awareness Month. Whereas our community is home to individuals and families adversely affected by problem gambling, and whereas compulsive gambling is often hidden from family members, social services, and mental health professionals, and whereas compulsive gambling often occurs in combination with other disorders such as chemical dependency and depression, and whereas it is important to raise awareness of the warning signs of compulsive gamblers and connect them with professional help. So therefore, I, Sue Fookman, Mayor of the City of Norfolk, by the power vested in me, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2016 as Problem Gambling Awareness Month, and I urge citizens to learn more about the consequences of problem gambling. Is there anyone here that is responsible for this one? We'll make sure it gets to the right place. Okay, we're going to move on to public hearings then. Maybe what we want to do at the request of Judy is to, let's take item 20, the public hearing regarding the Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund grant. Bring this to the forefront, as these others may get a little bit more complicated, and I know she has another place to be at tonight, so if it's okay with everyone, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to open the public hearing regarding the Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund grant number 12, TFRH 5034, and this is the second public hearing that's required by the grant. So, Judy, you want to come forward and speak to this for us?
I'm Judy Joy with Northeast Economic Development District here in Norfolk. The city of Norfolk was awarded $501,905 in Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Funds for the renovation of 3 properties in downtown Norfolk. Those 3 properties were to be renovated into 7 rental units, of which 3 of the units were required to be rented to low to moderate income families during the 5-year affordability period. Of the $501,905 of the NAHTF grant funds, $422,620 was utilized for the actual housing rehabilitation, $49,800 for housing management, and $29,485 for general administration of the project. Rental property rehabilitation and rental conversion costs in the amount of $601,571 was provided by the local property owners. The total cost of the projects was $1,103,476. There was one contract amendment that was approved by the Nebraska Department of Economic Development for a decrease in proposed accomplishments from 7 units to 6 units. The decrease in proposed accomplishments also reflected a decrease in the budget for housing rehabilitation of $78,370, housing administration of $5,614, and general administration of $4,212. The number of rental units required to be rented to low to moderate income families, however, did remain at 3. There were no persons displaced as a result of the grant activities. Questions that I could answer for anyone?
As noted, this certainly has been before us before, and appreciate all the efforts on this. I think it's a great thing that's happening for us down there, so if no questions?
Thank you.
Okay. I will remind you, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone that does want to come forward and speak to this at all, or may have questions of? If not, seeing none, I will close this hearing and then look for where there is no action for us. Yeah, we're good. All right. So thanks, Judy, for being here. Appreciate it. You bet. So let's move back up to number 18 then, which will be the public hearing at the request of Kathleen Koenig Rocky Rocky Koppel, Rocky McKeever, the whole group, to hear an appeal of the conditional use permit amendments to Conditional Use Permit Resolution 2014-43, amended by Resolution Number 2016 PC-2 regarding Off-Road Ranch LLC. So with that, I will open this public hearing and assume, Kathy, you're going to come forward and speak to this. What?
Go to Val.
Oh, okay. All right.
Here. Let's open
Do
the
we-
hearing. You
Okay.
need to do this.
I need to read through
You
them.
do 2, 3, 4, 5, then give it to Val,
All right.
if you will, please.
Yes. I'm sorry, I missed this page here. All right, I've opened the hearing, and this hearing results from the appeal of the granting of modifications by the Planning Commission to the conditional use permit granted to Off-Road Ranch LLC for the operation of a stock car racetrack. The appeal was filed by Kathleen Koenig Rocky on behalf of multiple individuals signing the appeal submitted by Ms. Rocky. This hearing shall be conducted informally. Each witness may present his or her testimony in narrative fashion and shall state his or her name and address prior to commencing his or her testimony for the record. This hearing will not be conducted using the strict rules of evidence, and the city council may admit and give probative effect to evidence which possesses probative value commonly accepted by reasonable, prudent persons. Elected officials may question any witness at any time during the proceedings. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Val. All right. Wow.
Sorry.
That's quite all right.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will start off, I would like to put some exhibits into record, and I will list those for you now. Exhibit number 1 will be the conditional use permit resolution number 2014-43. Number 2 will be the conditional use permit modification application.
I'm not sure what you said.
It's me. I didn't say anything.
Damn thing off.
That darn Siri.
Okay. So number 2 will be the conditional use permit modification application, Form A and justification Form B, received December 16th, 2015. Number 3 will be the 300-foot boundary map. Number 4 is the abstract or certificate. Number 5 is the notice of Planning Commission meeting, January 5th, 2016. Number 6 is the proof of publication of Planning Commission meeting, January 5th, 2016. 7 is the notice of public hearing, January 5th, 2016 Planning Commission meeting. 8 is the proof of publication of Planning Commission public hearing, January 5th, 2016. 9 is the Planning Commission Resolution Number 2016 PC-2. 10 is the January 5th, 2016 Planning Commission meeting minutes. 11 is the appeal of the Conditional Use Permit Resolution Number 2016 PC-2 received on January 19th, 2016. And then 12 is the amended appeal of Conditional Use Permit Resolution Number 2016 PC-2, also received January 19th, 2016. 13 is the notice of the City Council meeting, February 1st, 2016. 14 is the proof of publication of the City Council meeting, February 1st, 2016. 15 is the notice of public hearing, February 1st, 2016 City Council meeting. 16 is the proof of publication of City Council public hearing, February 2nd, 2016. 17 is the correspondence from Bruce Strong received by email on January 30th, 2016. And then 18 will be the correspondence received by Trent Howard on June 6, 2015, July 9th, 2015, and also July 18th, 2015. And I believe number 16 should be February 1st, not February 2nd. Sorry.
As noted, corrected.
You'll receive all of those. Tell her, you'll receive all of those.
All 18 of these
Yes.
will be received.
There you
go. All right. You're bringing me to a new area here, Val, and I appreciate it. Job well done. So with that,
She's gonna make some other comments.
okay, go forward.
And so the introduction of this issue tonight, I guess I'll start with my part of it, is I kind of came in between, in the middle of this, that had already been accepted under the 2014-43. So Trent Howard had gone through all of that, and so when the amended conditional use application came in,
It's the same way we did it
I
last year.
started looking into the area, trying to learn about this process that happened a year and a half ago. And so when I started doing that, I was looking into the area, and I noticed that not only does Off-Road Ranch have conditional use permits, but there are a few others in that area also.
A few other conditional use permits.
Yes.
Can you give example or help me out a little bit? I mean, I realize we're industrial down there, right?
Right, and there's a lot of ag and industrial in that area, and some of the other conditional use permits is concrete crushing in I-1, a storage facility in I-3, and also there are 2 watchman caretaker conditional use permits that allow them to live in I-1. And, yeah. Actually, 2 of the people who have those watchmen actually signed the appeal. So they are living in I-1 zoning with an I-1 zoning close by them.
Hopefully when we, and I kind of remember this as part of the planning commission, but I would like to feel that we were pretty open in making the statement that when you're requesting to live in industrial, realize you could be looking at something that's 24/7. Okay, as long as, like I say, this gets tough when you try to make these kind of decisions to the best of your ability, and keep going.
Well, that's just kind of my history of trying to learn about this off-road ranch and the procedure. And so the application to amend the conditional use came in December 16th, I believe. And they requested 3 specific amendments to the 2014-43 conditional use that they were operating under this summer. And those amendments were allowing racing to occur on holidays that are canceled on Sundays, 2 additional special nights of racing per year, and then also to allow the northern gate to be used in case of emergency. And the Planning Commission voted separately on all 3 of those, and they passed all 3 of those to then put in the 2016 PC-2 into place, which is what we are here tonight appealing.
Okay. So the addition to those are what we're reading in the red, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so that is what we're here tonight talking about. And also, Planning Commission asked Trent Howard some questions, since he was the one who did the first conditional use and also was receiving any complaints, if at all,
Handing this off.
during the summer when they were actually operating. So if
Great.
he can answer those better.
Trent, anything you want to add to this? Obviously, I know you were very much involved, so.
Mayor and council, the one item that I do have, it is Exhibit 18, and it's going to be the June 6th letter received from Bruce Strong. He had wrote this in the middle of the night, or early morning hours, speaking of noise, several, motorcycles, I think they had their bike fest during that time. And then he went into a dialogue of specific violations. And those violations were I spoke to all those violations at the Planning Commission meeting. And those items had been addressed, and they did fix all those items barring the PSA announcements, they said that they've always been doing them on a very regular timeframe. So regular but irregular, so that the people basically had those. The one item that in the most recent email, which was sent Saturday night, I believe, actually Exhibit 17. And he spoke to that second paragraph. It said that Trent Howard stated in a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that he had received no complaints due to noise from the off-road ranch. On June 5th, I spoke to that. About 1 hour and 3 minutes and 40 seconds into that Planning Commission meeting, I was questioned, and the actual question was, is if we had a lot of noise complaints. And I answered that as no, I have not. The noise complaint that I have, there's kind of that question was if I had a lot of noise complaints, and I answered it no. Bruce did send me that email, though, back in June. But on the questions that he had listed out, that wasn't, I mean, he spoke of noise up on the top first couple paragraphs there, but I guess I felt I had answered that question to the best of my knowledge, that I have not received a lot of noise complaints, and I really haven't. So, in fact, later on, July 9th, Timothy Miller, I emailed myself because I knew that I couldn't remember all this. So the day that I talked to Tim Miller, he came in, he called the fire station, and then he stopped by on the 7th in regards, and he explained that he was a sound audio engineer and he worked at the college, and that he was hired by the neighborhood who and has been going to the races, and he didn't believe that the mufflers were in place. And we talked about this, I guess pretty openly, how I didn't know how I was gonna check them. If I go lay underneath every race car that comes through, I didn't feel like that was gonna be probably the most efficient way of dealing with that. I have been in communication with the Signers in regards to all this, and I don't understand the points and the racing part of it, how if there's violations, them cars are inspected as they come in, because if somebody could make their car lighter, faster, more weight, and once again, I'm not a race guy, but then again, I'm sure there's little tricks of the trade like there's in most things. So they said that the mufflers were in place for all those cars, all the races except for that one special event that they normally, or that they had. So that was the only other noise, really noise issue I had. And then we received an email July 18th, or I did, from Bruce Strong again, and it was a thank you letter stating that, in that first paragraph, it says racing has been done on time. The noise level then at one time was extremely loud has greatly reduced. I would guess that this is due to some sort of enforcement of cars wearing the correct mufflers. So I guess I did not go out there and lay underneath any of those vehicles and check for these mufflers. I was informed that they were on them the entire time. So I guess that's the only really other thing that I had to add in regards to what I stated at the Planning Commission meeting in regards to the noise.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions at this point for either Trent or for Val? Okay, if not, are we looking for Kathy to come forward at this point? Kathy? Whoops, gotcha.
It's okay, I got another one.
Two more? We're good. We're in good shape.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council, for allowing us to appear before you this evening in reference to our appeal that we have filed on this conditional use permit amendment issue. I guess I want to begin, first of all, by talking about the issue that Mr. Howard just addressed, which is that of enforcement. And I appear today on behalf of a number of neighbors in the area who are concerned about enforcement of the conditional use permit and the monitoring that it really is necessary associated with this particular type of conditional use permit. It's one thing to be on the honor system and to rely on, in this case, off-road raceway to police what it does there, but ultimately it's our position that the responsibility to monitor for the usage of the mufflers rests with the city. It is not something that the people I represent are in a position to do, and if the city doesn't have the knowledge or the training or the information to enable them to adequately address issues relating to this conditional use permit, then it's incumbent upon them to gain that knowledge, to gain that information that they need to see that they need to analyze to see whether or not the conditional use permit is being complied with. Your conditional use permits talk about those being a personal privilege. And I agree that it's important that somebody who has a conditional use permit talks to the city and gives the city information about what it is they're doing and supports their argument that they're in compliance. But ultimately, the buck stops with the city to see to it that the conditional use permit is being followed and that the mufflers are being used. And so I don't feel entirely comfortable with the notion that we're not checking. We should be checking. That was something we discussed when we were here a year and a half ago, when we spent many, many hours looking at the issue of this conditional use permit. We have three arguments or three issues that we've raised in the appeal that we've filed, and I want to go through those one by one. I don't anticipate that I will be offering any evidence tonight, just more or less a presentation to you about our concerns. But I appear here tonight on behalf of the following people who have signed this appeal: Ed Ferris, Mary Ortmeyer, Warren and Sheila Stuthman, Pastor Matt Gilmore, Jody Palmer, Cole Palmer, Dwayne Wolf, Larry and Nell Vitruba, and Bruce Strong. Mr. Strong's communicated with you by a letter that he sent to you over the weekend. I want to first talk about the issue of the second gate. We don't necessarily have an issue with the gate on the north being permitted to be opened in the event of an emergency, but we do think it's important to be proactive in considering how you're going to handle the flow of traffic from that exit. I envision a situation where I believe what the applicant is looking at is if there's a severe thunderstorm warning, for example, if people need to exit the facility quickly, that it would be perhaps well advised to have two separate exits. And we have no problem with people needing to leave that facility in the event of a severe thunderstorm warning or some sort of emergency or something of that nature. But we do recommend that there be something in the conditional use permit that talks about the path of travel for those folks that are leaving the north side of the racetrack. And we suggest that you direct the traffic to the east down that road so that you don't have all the traffic converging by that traffic leaving and heading west and running into the traffic that's leaving out from the other exit that is at the west end of the racetrack. So our position is really simple. We just want there to be an orderly method by which traffic is going to exit from that exit. And I think that would be beneficial to the people who are there, as well as the people that live in the neighborhood who have concerns about traffic coming in and out of that secondary entrance. I want to spend most of my time tonight talking about the issue of the expansions of the conditional use permit that this particular application contemplates. When we were here a year and a half ago, we spent a lot of time talking about what racing would look like, what the schedule would be. The applicant was asked at various times during the public hearing to talk about how they would schedule their races. And at the end of the day, at the end of the hearing, there was actually comments made by this body that, well, it's only this many nights of racing. It's only going to be for this many months out of the year. It's only a brief period of time during the summer months. And that was certainly, I think, part of what you folks looked at when you voted on the conditional use permit. You looked at the parameters that were put into place. You looked at the schedule that the neighborhood was going to be faced with. And there was a lot of thoughtfulness given to how that was going to be limited in scope. And these additional racing nights really go contrary to that notion, particularly the conditional use permit amendment that talks about rescheduling. So in the event of, let's say, a rain out on a Saturday night, this conditional use permit amendment allows for the ability of the track to reschedule to the following night. Now, and they also provide that not only in the event of a cancellation due to a rain out or an inclement weather situation, but also if there would be a situation where you would have a holiday coming into play. And our position is that's a potentially major modification of this conditional use permit. If you think about how often that could happen, it could happen very little, but it could happen a lot. And that would really dramatically change how this conditional use permit works. First of all, the people that live in this neighborhood, they plan their lives around this racing schedule. So if they know there's going to be racing on Saturday night, they're not going to maybe have that barbecue Saturday night, they're going to schedule it for Sunday. Well, we're not going to be able to do that for these folks out in the neighborhood. They're not going to be able to plan the way they can now on when racing will be as they carry out their weekly routine. And I think you have to consider how difficult that is for those folks that live out there. In addition, if you're asking for racing to potentially be moved from Saturday night to Sunday night, you impact the people out there who have to get up and go to work the next day on Monday. Now, there may be people who live out there who go to work the next day on Sunday, I know that. But again, that is, I think, a factor that this body was looking at when it first helped to craft, if you will, the original conditional use permit, that disruption to the neighbors, and that this provides for some additional potential disruption to them if you can move it from a Saturday night to a Sunday night and do so multiple times during the racing season. So that's a concern to the neighbors out there as well. We know of no track in the state of Nebraska that does this, where it basically has a schedule into place, but the schedule is consistently subject to modification each and every week due to a change from a Saturday night to a Sunday night schedule. I can't find any, nor can my clients find any evidence of a similar situation where another city in your situation has allowed for that kind of broad expansion that can potentially really extend the racing nights for a racing season for a track similar to this one. We think that is a major change to the conditional use permit. It was not contemplated nor presented as a threat to the neighbors at the time that the original hearing was held, and only now in coming before the Planning Commission is this now an issue. And for those reasons, we oppose that kind of expansion racing season. Finally, I want to address the issue of these super late model races, or what are called special racing nights. And I think it's a little unclear, and Mr. Shukai was talking with us before we began tonight to try to clarify what it is exactly the racetrack wants to do. And this has kind of been a perennial problem. Sometimes they come in, they have kind of a general suggestion of what it is they want to do, but when we get down to brass tacks, when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, we're not really sure what they want, and then they'll come in and they'll say, okay, this is what we want. Well, I'm interested to hear what they have to say, because the super late model races are the races where the cars do not have to have the mufflers. And those may be a race that they plug into their schedule and they fit into their normal race night, and in so doing, they may pull away a race that they might have otherwise planned to have. But you can be looking at cars with no mufflers going around for more than one lap, more than one heat. And so it's not just that you're going to have a race. You have to look at what does this applicant's request actually amount to. And I think it can be a little misleading if you don't look behind the request and look at, okay, what does this really mean? If we're going to have special nights of racing, if we're going to have nights where we're going to have the super late model races, I think it's incumbent upon the applicant to explain to this body exactly what does that mean, what does that mean in terms of number of races, number of cars, number of laps, because all of those factors go into this overall issue that we have with the noise level, which is the concern that the neighbors have in this particular area. And so if we look back and reflect just briefly on when we were here before, at that time there was no sound study done, there was no scientific analysis of the effect of the sound and what the cumulative effect of the sound would be over an extended period of time with a number of different vehicles. And that was something that we thought would be a great idea, but it was rejected. Okay, so be it, the racing's allowed. But if you're going to have the applicant come in now, and they're going to say they want to have special nights of racing, and they want to have more super late model races, then it needs to be clear to this body and the neighbors what that means. How many races, how many heats, how many laps, what are we realistically talking about in terms of how this will impact? And I think at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that this particular type of race can involve cars that do not have the mufflers, and that enhances the sound level, and that's what we were all concerned about when we were here a year and a half ago. So I guess my main concern is that going back to what we did a year and a half ago, as I indicated before, we spent a lot of time talking about that conditional use permit. This body spent a great deal of time, over several hours, questioning the applicant, looking at the schedule, looking at the plan and analyzing, was this in the best interest of the city? Ultimately, you concluded it was. And they've had a season of racing. They've had one season of racing. And they got their foot in the door, and now they're trying to kick it down by asking for more. We don't want to have to keep coming back year after year after year to face constant expansions of the conditional use permit. Are they exercising their right to do so? Absolutely, as are we to protest it. But at some point, the line needs to be drawn so that everyone can understand what this conditional use permit's going to be, and there are going to be reasonable parameters put into place so that the people who can live in that area can continue to be good neighbors, as they're trying to be, can continue to live their lives knowing that this track's going to be there. They've accepted that. We're trying to move on. But this is a very major change in what this body previously approved, and we think it needs to you need to take a serious look at the expansion, beyond what was originally approved, and whether it's truly necessary and warranted under the circumstances. So that's really all I have for you this evening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
You said that they might have to race on Sunday nights and people are sleeping. What was the time limit that we gave them to shut their engines off?
I think 11 o'clock is basically the time limit. I'm just concerned more about the fact that you have people going to work the next day on a Monday versus people typically maybe not having to work on
I was thinking it was even 10
Sunday.
o'clock, though.
If you look on number 1,
Okay.
it talks about it should operate only, it talks about operating on Saturdays, 6 PM until 10:30, with the actual operation going till 11 if there are delays due to weather or accidents.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman, if I could, I would like to take in case of an emergency, the northern property gate. Can we address that one? Will you, because I think this other one's going to get a little lengthy. There might be much more conversation. You made a comment there, if, in fact, we can, what was your suggestion?
We're not necessarily opposed to utilization of that gate in the event of an emergency. We don't, that may be prudent. I think, I wasn't there, I don't know exactly, but I think, and Mr. Signer can address this better than me, but I believe there was a severe thunderstorm warning last year during the racing season and on one of the nights, and people had to leave rather quickly, and I think they wanted to be able to use that gate if that would happen in the future. And I think that makes sense. I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily oppose the use of the
Right.
gate.
I understood.
We just suggest that if the conditional use permit is modified, that the traffic be diverted from that north gate and sent in an easterly direction down that road, which is, I believe, known as Old Highway 8, so that you don't have all the traffic converging off in a westerly direction as it leaves the track. I think it just might be safer. It might allow for a more orderly flow of travel away from the facility, particularly if people are leaving in a hurry or in the event of severe weather.
Okay, so if I could, our attorney here has suggested all traffic exiting the northern property gate shall be directed to go east on the county road upon leaving the racetrack. Okay?
That's what we're looking for.
Okay.
That's what we're looking for.
Okay,
It's a
so-
specific parameter, a specific rule concerning the use of that. And I think the gate should be used, I think the idea is that it's used in the event of an emergency.
Right.
It's not, I think that's the idea, I think that's what they're proposing, actually, is that they want to be
Great.
able to use it
Great.
when needed, not necessarily all the time.
That language there, I don't know, I got up and handed that to Val and Trent. I don't know if they had any ideas about it, but in my mind, we would, if you were to embrace something like that, you would add that right at the end of existing number 2.
Right. In case of emergency, use of the northern property gate onto Old Highway 8 shall be allowed. All traffic exiting the northern property gate shall be directed to go east on the county road upon leaving the racetrack. By process of elimination, Kathy, I'm trying to take
And
care
I
of
don't
that
think
one.
that's as controversial as the other
I agree,
issues.
I agree. Okay, so, going back to the other discussion on the suggested changes. Council?
What you have.
I'm sorry?
I didn't catch what you asked for.
I'm just looking for your comments as far as what has been brought forward here. Certainly the question of those Saturday nights that may get rained out and allowing for then on Sunday.
Are you really asking if they have any questions for Kathy about that?
Yeah. Well, I think it needs to be discussion, and I'm certain Kathy might have some, do you have questions for her directly? I guess, I'm just trying to get discussion going here.
What's the
Obviously-
process, Mayor? Will proponents of Ms. Rocky, of what Ms. Rocky's proposing be able to speak next, and then we'll move on? I guess I'm wondering.
Okay,
what
you want-
the process is going forward. And then-
Well, we got a process here that's in front of me, but,
If they've got no questions for her, then you'll move on to that.
okay, all right. No questions at all for Ms. Rocky then? All right.
Not at this time.
Okay,
anyway.
so we're going to go to presentation of evidence and witness by others opposed to modifications.
Thank
So
you.
if there's some, yep. Obviously, well, yep, we'll have you come forward and sign in for us, speak to it, and I'm trying to make this too simple, aren't I?
And you saw Kevin wanted to get out.
Yeah,
This'll work. We follow.
okay.
This'll work.
I'll follow it.
My name is Roy Pint. I live here in town, but I actually own property on Old Highway 8 to the east of the racetrack. Since I don't live out there, I'm not going to discuss really noise because I live 5 miles away from there, although I can hear it from my residence. Ms. Rocky hit a lot of these things, but if I try to jump around, it'll be even more convoluted than I probably made it, so I'll try to be brief and concise.
Hey, I've kind of made it complicated as well, so bear with me too on this. So,
I'll just go by the request. The first, to modify the operating days for racing, asking to, in case of inclement weather or holidays, racing be moved to the next day. The schedule as given in the conditional operating permit is 24 weeks long. That is the entire spring and all of summer. According to their website, their schedule, they list 21 dates that they will be in operation, including the first date, April 9th, listed as a practice night. I know that when this first was discussed, that I thought by Mr. Lang specifically asking for clarification that practicing would not be allowed on the track. I don't know if putting it on the schedule makes it permissible or not. Like Ms. Rocky says, the people who do live out there right now are open on Friday nights, Sunday nights. If you allow them to move it to Sundays because of inclement weather, there is no planning. That's probably less than a 24 hours notice on a lot of those. A late Easter could be on a Sunday during that time frame. As far as any other holidays, all of them, except for July 4th, are always on a Monday, so I don't know why he's specifically asking for holidays. If he wants to be open on July 4th, or if he doesn't, that's his prerogative, but don't push it back to the 5th just because that happens to be on a Saturday. They mentioned special nights of racing. What does that even mean? Is it additional super late model races? If it is, then state that. The Highway 8 gate, it's already designated the emergency access to the property for fire, rescue, and law enforcement. If there is a true emergency and they're allowing people to leave that gate, how does that allow for those emergency purposes to go in? And I guess I would like to know what constitutes an emergency. I know for a fact that they did open the gates during a downpour to let people out onto that road. Is that inconvenient or is that an emergency? And it kind of needs to be addressed. Does it need to be an actual watch or warning? It's just a little vague for my taste. Are any of these three that big of a deal? Not individually. You guys set the parameters for this conditional operating permit. You said it, yes, it's going to be loud. You compared it to football games. A city the size of Norfolk with 3 high school teams only had 15 home games this year. They don't last as long as the race nights, and they're condensed over 3.5 months, not almost 6. The noise is totally different. Cheering crowds, whistles, versus race cars and open headers, even mufflers. You asked that you handle this through building permits. The city of Norfolk's year-to-date building permits show that a building permit wasn't obtained until March 4th. The Off-Road Ranch's website was showing significant construction, including February photographs where the grandstand was almost complete. I am not a contractor, but I thought the process would be to obtain the permit before you start. I know Stanton County specifically says you may not do anything, including dirt work, until a building permit is obtained. I don't know if because the city controls that 2-mile radius, if Stanton County's rules no longer in effect or not. This is not the first request for changes. He successfully asked for a waiver for the parking lot. He came to you stating it's going to be too expensive to pay that. But at the time he granted the conditional use permit, he agreed to the conditions as set forth. It would be prudent for him to know what it's going to cost before he jumps into this. And if he knew that at the beginning, then maybe he just assumed that he would be allowed to do it without getting the correct way to do it with the paving. It seems like his track is evolving, and he needs, even the Planning Commission, when he first went forward, he didn't have a plan, he had an idea. And it was evolving constantly, and I think the Planning Commission made a mistake granting that at that point with so little information. And whether to remedy it or to set it in place, I think you need to make a stand and deny the expanded racing, have the emergencies defined, and just a definition for the special nights of racing.
Okay, any questions for him? Okay, thank you. Anyone else that wants to come forward? And again, if you'll state your name for us and sign in.
I'm Edwin Ferris. I really don't know why we're here tonight. I thought this was set in stone, that he was going to only have those couple of Saturdays and Sundays allowed. You guys all questioned him and Poshpishel both, repeatedly. Is this only going to be the Saturday that happened to go that you need to go on a Sunday? Well, now he says that if it rains, and they call it before halftime, we want to take and race the next day because we lose money. Well, I lose money on my job too. Tomorrow I'm supposed to be in Wayne. You think I'm going to make it? No. So they're going to hire somebody else because this lady needs to be in her house by Wednesday. That's doing business. You make money, you lose money. And just having it because, well, we think it's going to rain hard enough, we're just going to call it so we can do it tomorrow night, that shouldn't be allowed. Like I said, you guys asked him several times, both of them, in the original meeting. I know your guys' words should be in rock. That's all I got.
Mr. Paris, I would like to say to you, obviously it is in rock. However, they have every right to come forward and ask the question, and this body will then make the determination. So I don't want you to think that, obviously, this is a hearing, it's a public hearing.
Yes.
And certainly, your points are well made, but I do want you
Thank
to
you.
understand that those points, what is before us is his request, nothing that's granted. So
Yeah.
we'll further discuss. So I just want to clarify that.
Okay.
So, any questions for Mr. Paris at all?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you bet. Anyone else that wants to come forward and speak?
My name's Dwayne Wolf, neighbor I own the property immediately east of Off-Road Ranch. Everything discussed, I think, was, as far as our attorney or our representative is concerned, I agreed with. I think part of the problem could be solved real simply by, if Jerry Poshpishel was correct, he said that the guys that want to race in the super class want to come here and race, and if that is true, if they would just require them to put a muffler on. Bruce Strong checked into it. Most of those mufflers are about $35. I'm not sure, they could probably go more expensive, but they can buy them for $35. And if they would be required to use them, then the noise level would be resolved. But, if they won't refuse to come to race here and have to use a muffler, then that's their problem. That shouldn't be ours. The other thing is, if they have a Saturday night cancellation, I assume they got Sunday night to make it up, but if Sunday night was a cancellation, they wouldn't go on to the next night. I'm certain of that, right? So those are the only two things I wanted to address, and I thank you for.
Thank you for being here, sir. Okay. Anyone else that wants to come forward and speak that may be opposed to the modifications before us? Okay, how about, I'm at what, D here now, Clint?
You ready for tea?
Okay, presentation by Off-Road Ranch, the applicant. Talking of.
That's progress.
Hello, I'm Kevin Segnor. First, with the exit, my opinion is they're going to leave, and they're going to go right or left. And I don't know, once they go on a county road, if I'm the one that should be telling them to go right. If you guys want that to happen, that's fine with me, but I would think that an emergency situation, it ain't fair for everybody to turn right when they would need to go maybe left. I don't know. So to me, that sounds like we're getting into something a little silly. You know, we used it once last year. Hey, we would do it again, right or left. Some went left, some went right. Everybody got out of there just fine. So with that being said, I don't know if we need to beat on that anymore. I decided actually a few days ago, we're not going to postpone Saturdays to Sundays. We ain't gonna race on Sundays. Try and be a good neighbor. We're not gonna race on Sundays. For several reasons. I understand everything, but I come to the conclusion we're just not gonna do that. So it'll be the same as last year. We're not gonna race on Sundays. As far as us wanting to do these couple extra nights, they're not extra nights. We're already racing that night. It's already a regular scheduled race. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take the late models and we're gonna put in a super late model or some other class. We're not sure what it might be, but some other class, and replace it with those, same amount of laps, same amount of time. Nothing's changing except those people that we want to bring in, they don't require to have mufflers. You know, it's that kind of simple. We had the super late model class and it was fantastic. I got to believe once a track like ours does a really good night, it comes out and it does a really good night for the city. And you bring more people into town, it's going to be good for us, but it's also good for the community. I'm not sure the percentage and how the money rolls down, but money's moving. If you got 400 people, some money's moving. You got 1,500 people, more money's moving. It's just better for the community, I believe. When they say you keep coming up and you want to change and you want to do this and do this and do this, I own other businesses, and if I don't change with the times or with what presents itself, I'm in trouble. You got to roll with the punches, as they say. I understand. I can't just do it. I can't. They brought up the fact that other tracks don't have anything put in for postponement. That's because they can race it whenever they want. They don't have to postpone. If they're rained out, they can decide if they want to race the next night or not. That's why nothing's put into place. They don't have to. We do, and that's okay. I live with that, and that's fine. But that's why she brought up the point that there's no such thing put into place. And she's right, because they can race when they want. And I just wrote this down about the deal with football games and X amount of games. That's varsity games. There's junior high. There's JV. There's other games too. So I don't know what that number comes up to. I don't think it's worth really arguing.
Kevin, I don't think he was arguing. I think he was just suggesting.
That
So-
that we
Yeah,
do more racing
right.
or whatever. And I get that, but there's more football games than just
I understand.
what he said.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So,
Go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, if you're still,
I'm looking here. I'm glad the point did get brought up that some people live in I-1 or whatever. That's a good point where they live in a house and it's industrial. I mean, you got to expect some industry around there too, I would guess. Extra time. Again, it's no extra time, no extra laps. So at that point, I'll take any questions, I guess.
so Mike,
Could you explain to this body how you do check the mufflers? Because we were saying that maybe the city isn't checking, but I know you have things in place to check them. Could you get that out so we know what's going on?
We have a check inspector that checks the cars when they come off the track and then when they go on the track.
Kevin, yeah, look, Jerry, you need to.
We have a tech director that inspects the motors. and inspects different things that have to follow all the rules.
Who's
And
it?
then when they come in off the track, they have to weigh. And then when they weigh, that's when they're checked for mufflers. Very, very distinguished difference in sound between a car that has a muffler and a car that does not have a muffler. The muffler cars are with the lower rumble, and in fact, if you got to check them, you got to crawl underneath them, and we do. We check them all the time. It's just a standard procedure. It's a tech item.
And you have a professional that does this
Yeah,
and
yeah.
does it?
He's there every week.
So
That's
they're-
exactly what he does. He gets
Okay.
paid to do exactly that.
And that's what I thought we
Test the motors,
discussed.
test,
but-
he does it all. Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
And then the other thing I did want to explain, again, so you all really understand that we're not asking for anything any other than we want to add 2 more nights actually than what we had last year. Last year we had 1 night with the super late models. It's the same class that wants to come back again, plus the sprint cars want to come in. We've done, and this town has done, such a nice job with this race facility. We have one of the nicest race facilities in this area, in the whole state. People know that. These racers want to come here and race. And they're calling us. They want to come in. So that brings people into this town, that brings racers into this town. And these 2 organizations, the Sprint Core organization and SLMR, which is a super late model, they don't request mufflers. Some have them. We don't know. Last year, for example, the SLMR race that we had last year, over half of those cars had mufflers that we checked. Over half had mufflers. The other half didn't. But that's because we had that rule that they could run them without mufflers. Some had them, some didn't. Yet all the mufflers on these super late models all depends upon the horsepower that they can develop from them. Some get more horsepower from the mufflers, some don't. So the organizations has not requested that everybody has to run mufflers. They didn't request it. No one has to run mufflers. You know what I'm saying? So it's their object. They can do what they want to do. We're not adding any more lap times. We're not adding any more feature times. We're not running any later than any we ever. They just want to come in with this 1 class and race 3 times next year instead of the once. Does everybody kind of understand what we're getting at there?
Well, I'm going to ask Kevin to come back up for me if you would. Did you sign in for us, Jerry?
No,
Please,
but I will.
please do.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I want you, if you would, Kevin, to please tell us what it is now exactly that you are asking for in addition to what is already in place. Thanks,
Okay.
Jerry.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
The exit, I think, is
Right.
kind of a
Okay.
situation where we can, I mean, they're going to leave, they got to go right or left.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, okay. So what we want is, we're not going to do the Saturday to
Right.
Sunday. We're not doing that. What
No
we want-
Sunday racing.
No Sunday racing.
Okay.
What we want is 2 additional nights where the late model classes gets replaced by a super late model class or a sprint car class where they do not require mufflers. Same thing as what you already granted us last year on the 1 race. Same thing. We just want 2 more.
But we're not adding any additional racing nights.
What we're doing is we're taking just like we did last year with the super
Okay.
late model, the special class, the super late models come in. We eliminated the late models. We ran the same amount of laps, same amount of time, same amount of everything.
Great.
And it went great. A lot of people showed up. Wonderful for the city, wonderful for our facility. It makes sense as a business plan to change it and make it better for us in the community. So, no extra or
Okay.
anything.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood exactly. So, any other questions?
That being the point then, Kevin, am I hearing you correctly then, and I don't know if you have this revised,
Can we add this?
so you would be fine if item number 1, the original conditional use permit said stock car racing racetrack shall operate only on Saturdays, and the revision added unless a holiday or cancellation due to weather, then you're fine if we don't, if we deleted that then?
Yes, we're fine with it.
Okay.
Okay, so all the red in that first 2 lines.
And, I think, I like what I hear from you on, as far as the emergency exit. I personally, and I hear what Ms. Rocky presented on it. I would propose to this body that the signage, you know, you're concerned about directing traffic, being a public road, maybe that direction of traffic should actually be something as far as signage coming from the county law enforcement, as it is on our streets. You know, if I have some street that says it's only a right in or a right out, that's what it is, and I'm not so sure that the opposition would be in objection to that, so.
Yeah, I guess at that point, if there's a sign that says they got to turn right and they go left.
I mean, it's a legal situation. It's the
But there's
same
a
like
house right
speeding.
there, there's a house right there, and if they want to go left, how do you know they didn't come out of the, I'll put up, you know, what, if they want to put up a sign where, I just think it's,
Well, and I
Me
don't think
personally-
that's you putting it up.
Well, me-
And county may object to it, but.
me personally, if it's in, say, we're getting a bunch of rain, it went from a watch to a warning, I'm turning left, I'm going to my house to my kids. So, I think you're forcing somebody to do something that they don't want to in an emergency situation. That's my opinion.
That's neither here. So the last thing for my clarification, then, when you have your special races, and in this case, the super late model races, that's not every race that occurs that night, but that's an infill or a couple infills for that, or I need clarification.
It's replacing one class that we already do every Saturday night. We run the late models class every Saturday night. And what's that doing is we're taking that class, we're taking it out, and we're bringing the super late model class and putting them in.
So the
Or
late
sprint
model-
cars are putting them in. That's it.
So, but all of your races that night aren't necessarily the super late model
No, no,
race.
no.
That's
It would
my
be one
point of
group
clarification.
Probably
so-
25 to 30 cars that we're replacing with 25 or 30 cars from the other class.
And when you do that, is that the first race, the second race, the third race, you have the ability to schedule those earlier in the
It's-
evening or later in the evening?
It's
Oh, in the year?
It's the last race, and there's a reason for that. If we ran them before, say, the compact cars, people are leaving. So we want people to stick around.
They come to watch this.
They come to watch that, and we don't want people, all of a sudden, everybody's gone and they're watching, there's no one there, you know.
So you also mentioned, I think, that 50% of those folks had mufflers and 50%
I'm
of
not
them
saying
didn't.
50, but I'm saying there was cars there with mufflers on. And some have mufflers, some don't.
So the fact that the muffler is on or off does or does not, how does that affect the race itself?
Each individual has motors. Those motors are built to run, some motors are built to run with mufflers.
Yeah.
Some motors are built to run without mufflers.
Okay.
That's up to the driver and the racer himself. So consequently, the organizations, the SLMR organization, the 360 Sprint organization, don't require them, yes or no. They don't say you don't have to have mufflers, they just don't have it in their rules. So when they go to different tracks, like our tracks, Lincoln, Omaha, Columbus, around, they all come in how they are, with some with mufflers, some without.
Is that the major difference between the super late model races
That's
and regular?
it, that's it.
So would it be a more competitive race among people that had all, where everybody had a muffler?
Gotcha.
Or it would?
No.
No?
No.
Would it be
Each
more
motor
competitive
dictates-
if
each
nobody
motor
had a
will-
muffler?
Each motor will dictate something else.
Okay. So those folks that, where the motor and the muffler go together, would they prefer to race like motorists, like competition?
Yeah, they will race with that muffler every racetrack they go to.
Do they prefer to race other people with mufflers?
No, they don't care, because their motor's equal to the ones that's running without mufflers.
Okay.
It's a circuit group.
It's just a circuit group that travels, and it's no different than tires. They have to have, they have to have a certain brand of tire on. They give them 2 tire choices.
Don't get us too involved.
I won't get to that, but what I'm telling you is, you know what I'm saying. So their rules are, they have certain rules stated out.
So kind of where I'm going with this is if it was required that you had to have a muffler
The ones
To-
without mufflers, excuse me.
to run the SLMR,
You ain't gonna have a show.
You won't have a show, they won't show up. The ones that don't
Only
have
half the guys would
mufflers,
show up, the other half wouldn't show up.
the other half wouldn't show up.
There's not another bunch of people out there
No.
that would say, hey, I'm going to that.
Do you guys want to do this because these drivers are requesting to race at your track, right?
Yeah.
That's,
In fact, the SLMR that came here last year now want to come back for twice because they love the facility, they love the track, they love how they were treated, and that's what they want to do. And then the Sprint Car organization called, and they run in Omaha, Sioux Falls, all over, and that's a traveling group the same way. They
sprint
also
cars don't
want
have
that.
mufflers.
Huh?
The sprint cars don't have mufflers?
No,
Or some-
no.
Yeah.
And again, some of them do, some of them don't. It's just,
How many race nights altogether did you guys have last year?
we got rained out a couple, I think we ended up with 20, 18.
I'm not sure of the exact number.
Something
I
like
know
that.
we didn't have the track built in time where we could have raced. A lot of the April races that you schedule, there's a good chance we're not gonna race. I mean, just historically, even out at Riverside or Riviera, that it's too wet, you can't race.
You
Yeah,
put your
it-
schedule in there.
You just put it in and you do hope for good weather in April. It's usually not, but you hope for it.
So what you're asking, if you, theoretically, this calendar year, you have maximum 25 race nights or whatever?
Same as
And
last
you're-
year.
And you're asking that 3 of those allow for
Yeah,
Super Late?
instead of one, yeah.
Instead of-
Instead
Same-
of the one.
yes.
And I just want to mention this, we talked about noise, that's kind of the issue around here. Even one of our neighbors made a comment at the planning commission, depends upon which way that wind blows. Some nights you don't hear nothing, and he's a quarter mile away. Some night you can hear it downtown Norfolk, depends upon which way that wind is blowing. And that was real noticeable. I think you
And-
live out in that area.
Yeah.
It depends upon which way that wind goes.
It's irrelevant. Go ahead.
One thing I think you should maybe state is, basically, it's a burst of noise, because the late model race, how many laps are they?
Well, we did figure that out we'll run a show for, say, three and a half hours. It's well under an hour of noise. It goes for a little bit and then it stops for a while. Then it goes for a little bit and it stops for a while. So we're not talking, so if we talk an hour, let's say an hour of the night, which I don't think it's quite that much, and we're able to get 24 hours or 24 races in, we're talking 24 hours of noise out of the whole year. I mean, it's,
All classes.
that's the entire night.
The super late models won't run any more than 15 minutes total, with 8-lap heats, 125 lap feature of constant noise. Not constant, 8 laps, cut it off.
So what you're telling me here is there's nothing that we would be changing up here if we were to.
Kevin, what would
put
you
it down
consider
here.
an emergency? I think that was some of their concern too.
You know-
Are we thinking a warning? Should we have that written in there or?
There may be a total
I-
of blank nights of racing, or special races are allowed, special.
I don't know, I think,
races considered
race
cars can be operated without mufflers.
and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but there's some of us involved into this racing. My brother included, he works for the city for 30 years. I think we're smart enough to know what an emergency is. If it needs laid out, I can understand that and appreciate that, but because what we're looking at, we see weather, we're on the phone, we're looking at things, and if it comes to a point where things are getting a little iffy, we're gonna use that exit. I honestly don't think anybody cares that we did that last year. I mean,
That's what I was gonna ask. What was the event last year when you left? Do you remember what? I have no clue.
they said that there was hail in the area and high winds, and I think it went to a tornado warning. So, I mean, we gotta use some, and we can, I don't know, there's an emergency, it could be anything. It could be anything life-threatening. It could be tornadoes, it could be lightning, it could be bad people in the area. I don't know.
Thank you.
It happened once last year, and I would think everybody in this room would agree we did the right thing. I'd be hard pressed for anybody to say we didn't do the right thing.
Say that he did not abuse that. I know that.
So,
Okay, any other questions for Kevin?
More point of clarification, and it was brought up in the testimony, is the only reason that I'm even asking on it is, and I asked last year, I said, well, the race nights, are they going to be, is there going to be practice that occurs other than that? And apparently your first night was either a race night or a practice race night.
It was a scheduled race night
Okay.
that we let them come out there and do basically what's called test and tune, which is way less racing.
Okay.
Can I just
So,
let you speak to that?
That's, that,
My point is,
I
it
would
was
just
not
disagree with, so I
an
don't-
additional night.
No, it was not.
It was the actual scheduled
Yes.
race night. And granted, I was the one that brought it up, and that was because when Riviera was going on, there were often many nights in the middle of the week on Wednesdays or so when people were out there practicing. And that's what occurred, but it was not the middle of the week, it was a scheduled Saturday night that,
there was no car on that track anytime during the week except for Saturday.
okay, thank you.
Okay, Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
Nobody else? Thanks. All right, anyone else that wants to come forward and speak to this? Yeah, in support of what you've heard thus far? Okay, all right. Kath, do you want to come back up and, on behalf of your individual signing?
Thank you. I just want to make a couple of points. I guess I don't think the issue of people exiting the racetrack in the event of an emergency is a silly issue. I think it's an important issue. I think public safety does matter, and I don't see why it would be, why people would disregard instructions from the people who run this facility when it came time to exit in the event of an emergency. I would think they would look to those folks for guidance. There can be an announcement made. They can be told over the loudspeaker. He can have people out there directing traffic. So, I think it's, if you truly want to be a good neighbor and we're trying to work together in the event of an emergency, I think that is an important issue. And we're just looking at trying to avoid traffic congestion, particularly if these people, my understanding is if these people go left when they exit out the north, they're going to head toward the next road that they intersect with, and there's no stop sign there for people headed west. It's not a four-way stop. So we're just trying to provide for the orderly departure of people. Again, and when you have an emergency, you have people maybe in a hurry, and I understand and appreciate that they're going to need to be directed by these folks, but they have this conditional use permit, they're running a business, they're running this facility. This doesn't seem to me to be out of line or unnecessary under any circumstances. Mr. Signor says that this was fantastic. Now, I don't know what that means. That's a pretty generic term. But I don't know how many people came. I don't know how great this really is. But the fact of the matter is that, again, I know I'm repeating myself, but the super late model races, these cars do not have to have mufflers. So if you have multiple cars running multiple laps over the course of an hour, we're talking about a lot of noise, potentially a lot of noise over multiple nights based on what it is they're proposing. Now, they've said 3 nights, that they want to be able to do this racing, so it sounds like they want to be able to do it on the night they have, and they're asking for 2 additional nights, but there's also been made mention of the word sprint cars. If they're in fact planning on operating sprint cars, that's unclear to me. That's not, I don't believe, in anything that was considered by the Planning Commission. And that would be beyond and above what I think we're here to talk about tonight. I think the application has requested the ability to have special race nights to operate super late model race cars. And so I think we probably need to be specific because we don't want to have any confusion about what that's going to involve. There may be a tech that inspects these mufflers. I imagine he is paid by these folks that operate the racetrack. I don't know that for a fact. They can answer that question better than me. But I doubt that this is somebody who's reporting to the city or checking in with the city to monitor the compliance. And I go back to what I said earlier. The compliance on the muffler issue really rests with the city. And it's still their job to monitor the muffler situation, and we expect the city to continue to do that in the future. When we talk about the the bursts of noise over a period of an hour, that's still a noise level issue. And when we were here a year and a half ago, we talked about putting into place some appropriate parameters that would still enable this track to operate. It would enable it to open, it would enable it to attract a variety of people who want to come in and see racing. They have that opportunity now with what they have in their conditional use permit. I don't see anything that's compelling, that's truly compelling in terms of evidence presented by the applicant as to why we need these additional nights of super late model racing, other than it was quote-unquote fantastic and people are asking for it. I don't know what that means. And if we're going to be relying on evidence in a public hearing, there should be something persuasive about that would convince you that that's appropriate under the circumstances. So we're pleased to hear that they are willing to back away from that request on the Sunday night racing. I think that's very appropriate under the circumstances, particularly given what was represented to you at our initial conditional use permit. And we would ask that you consider our arguments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, are you ready to, I'm going to ask our city attorney, who's been sitting here jotting notes and making, okay, I'm sorry. Kevin, do you want to come back up? Yep, very good. I have a hard time following an agenda, don't I? I apologize. Rebuttal evidence by offer.
If it was portrayed where I didn't care about the emergency exit, right or left, I apologize. I do still find it, I mean, you gotta go right or left. I mean, I don't know what more to say. The way we did it last year, I think was very good, how we handled it. If it needs to be, for some reason, a reason they go to the left or to the right, I don't understand it, because you go to the left, there is a stop sign down there. They're exiting out of the west already. They could go south or north with no stop signs. If they exit on an emergency to the right, they're gonna come out on 24. If they go to the left, they're gonna go down and there's gonna be a stop sign. I mean, there's multiple ways to go. As far as, I think, telling them how to go, maybe I'm not an expert in that field and how things should flow, but I mean, right or left, it's up to them. I can't control where somebody's mind is at in an emergency. Like I said before, if you live to the left and you want to be there with your family in a case of emergency, there's somebody escaped prison or something in the area, I'm not going to the right. I'm just not. So I still think it's somewhat, anyways, that's what I feel, right or left. We're not throwing in sprint cars as on the terms. Maybe she is confused and I need to explain it. We were permitted a night last year where we didn't have to have mufflers. It wasn't super late model class. It was just a night we could do muffler. We could have did 360 sprints. We could have did, I believe, and there was nothing in there that said super late model. So what we're doing is just asking for, is it in there for super late model?
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. So with the asking for the 2 additional, it could be maybe 2 additional super late models, which I think is too much, and we would never want to do that. The one we want to do is the same as last year. We want to do a 360 sprints and a Hazy Memorial for the 50 years of Riviera Raceway, where we do super late model. That's what our plans are, those 3 things for the 2016 racing. Now, with that, do I want to be stuck with, all right, I got to do 2 super late models and 1 sprint race every year? No, I mean, if we had 3, if you want to force me to have the same language as last year, that's fine, because we're always going to do a super late model. But maybe there's a reason we'd want to do next year 2 sprints. But this year, it makes sense. We're going to do the super late model as we did last year. Another one at the end of the year for a Hazy Memorial. And then in the middle of the year, I believe it's June 18th, don't quote me on it, we're going to do sprint cups, or sprints. So that's, I think that makes pretty good sense of what we want to do in 2016. But I don't think we should be, and what I'm asking, I don't think I put it in there, sprints or additional super late models or anything. I would like that to be whatever is best for that season. Maybe somebody approaches us and, hey, we're racing in Denver on a Friday night, and we're gonna, instead of spending X amount of money, we'll come to your show that Saturday for cheaper. A little room to make a business decision, make a smart decision that doesn't cost any more time, any more laps, anything like that.
Yep.
Yes.
Bear with me here, trying to understand it all. The parameters of this were set out in the conditional use permit. There's a lot of discussion about it. And from what I get, you're telling me you have one night right now where you do the super late model races, but it's not super late model races the entire night, that night, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is it reasonable to look at, that you want to have 2 additional race nights where you can allow super late model races? Why not, instead of that, live within the parameters that have been set and just have one night that's all super late model races? So you can accommodate more drivers, but it's all in one night instead of 3.
And I would not want to do that. I guess I just wouldn't want to do that. You got your regular classes, and then you have a special class, and we'd like to just spread it out to the night.
Would the best way to explain that is if you do what Josh has suggested, you'd cut out all the regulars altogether, and it would hurt your regular season?
It would. And ultimately, we want to have, super late class, and then we want to have a memorial, which we think is a great idea as far as the last 50 years of the Hazy facility. Putting all 3 of them in one night, I don't think would be a smart business move. I think it would be better off having it 3 different nights.
So all the cars that night, they wouldn't have to have mufflers?
Just that class, just that special class that we're bringing in. All the other ones is same as business as usual as every Saturday night involved. Just that special class that we bring in. And again, we're removing the late models out of that evening's racing.
Other questions? Go ahead.
And so then, because I noted it in here, it said two additional special nights. It didn't, so when we bring the sprint cars in, are we removing the super late models then?
Well, what we have planned for this year is the super late model earlier in the year, the sprints in June sometime, and then at the end of the season is the Hazy Memorial super late model. So it would be 2 super late models, 1 sprint.
I guess I phrased that the wrong way. The super late models replace the late models then?
The super late models would replace the late models.
Okay.
The sprints would replace the late
That's
models.
what I was getting at.
And then again, super late models, yeah.
That's, because the other races would still, the other racers with
Regular
their regular
schedule.
car, or
Yep.
with their regular muffler.
Regular class.
Mufflers and classes would
Yes.
still be running.
Yes.
Kevin, what I'm reading here is it says, let me find my place here again. Maybe 1 super late model race and 2 additional special nights of racing. So it's not saying 3 nights of super late models. It is saying 1 night of super late model no matter what in the cup.
Which is already there.
Correct, that's already there. He
Right,
just asks
okay.
for 2 additional, but it doesn't specify
Right.
what type of cars that is, whether that's sprint cars or super late models. You didn't bring it up, but am I right in thinking that your late models are your loudest cars out there?
They're the
Or am I
loudest
wrong
cars
in
out
that?
there, yeah. They're the loudest
So
cars.
these would replace your
Yes.
loudest cars for that. Now, you wouldn't have an additional, am
Right, you're correct.
I thinking right? I haven't been to the
You're
races
absolutely
in
correct.
10 years, but
But you're absolutely right. The late models out of our current every Saturday night racing is the loudest. and those would be taken out on those 3 nights.
I appreciate that clarification, because I certainly didn't understand it that way, so. Obviously, I'm not. Okay, any other questions for Kevin while he stands before you? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So where am I now here, Clint? Are you ready to help me with this?
I think you're ready to close the hearing.
Okay, and then move forward. All right. With that, seeing no one else is before us, I'm going to close the hearing, and then I'm going to look for some discussion and some direction from this body to try to pull together how it is that we'll ask our staff to proceed with this conditional use permit. So, City Attorney, if you would, for me. Lots of notes here, folks, so bear with us.
A couple of things, if we're gonna, can I ask Kathy a question?
Sure, please.
Kathy, we had all of this discussion about mufflers and no mufflers, and do you and your clients care if it's a super late model race? Is that I think that's in the conditional use permit because that's what was asked for last year. Really, what I'm hearing is it's a race car without a muffler.
That's what I'm hearing.
Is that what you're hearing
Stay there,
as well?
Jerry.
I'm understanding the super late model car can race without a muffler. The way the conditional use permit is presently, in its present form, 1 night per year.
Right, and I understand that last year, that was authorized by the conditional use permit that was in effect.
Right.
And what I'm hearing is that notwithstanding it said super late model race, there was a special race with a car without mufflers that wasn't a super late model race, it was something else. It was super late. But as we go forward, do you care if there's a modification that just talks about vehicles that have mufflers and vehicles that don't? Does it matter if it's a super late model or if it's a Sprint? To you?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you.
Okay, I thought you were.
I'm
Well,
asking you, and
I
don't-
think we need to have a clear understanding of what night, how many nights, and if so, what night it's going to be that there's going to be no mufflers. Are we going to have it 1 night a year, potentially, 2 nights a year, potentially, 3 nights a year, potentially?
Well, what,
Are there going to be no mufflers allowed only on the super late model car? Or are we going to allow no mufflers on other cars? I think those are the issues.
well,
On
and,
those 3 nights.
I mean, if you're going to call it a special night of racing, what does that mean? Does that mean you're not following your muffler rule? You know, how is this muffler rule going to be
yeah,
followed?
and what I'm hearing distilling from this is a special night of racing being an instance where it's not the entire night, but rather it's on 3 instances, part of the race card is replaced with cars that don't have mufflers.
Well, it's a slippery slope, as they say. That's my concern. You know, when we were here 1.5 years ago, we talked about mufflers. We spent time talking about assuring the neighbors that we were going to be looking at mufflers. We were going to be limiting noise exposure. And we developed or carved out this exception for 1 night of super late model racing. And I'm afraid if you start carving out exceptions for other cars and special nights, you're on your way down that slippery slope. And Mr. Howard, who is charged with the duty to enforce the muffler rule, has an even harder time doing so. So I think you have to have very clear-cut parameters, because ultimately it's the job of the city to police whether there's compliance.
Okay, thank you. When I was discussing with the mayor here, a couple of things, and just give you one option as far as.
Do you want me to sit down?
I don't have another question,
Okay, all
Kathy. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
One of the options that I would see is that if we had, as staff, if we had some direction, what you want to do about an exit, like you want to have direction, or you want to have signage, or you just want to allow the access to go That kind of direction would give us an opportunity to put something together in language for you to come back and consider. The other thing is that I think I've heard enough that I think we could come up with, I'm looking for Val to shake her head maybe, but I think we could come up with some language based on what we talked about. And I mean, I'm not so, where we allow the special race without naming whether it's a sprint car, without naming whether it's a special late model, but talking about it not having mufflers, as I believe Josh did, and coming back with something for you that way. I mean, I'm not sure we have A, B, and C on the resolutions that do that, but if you want to consider a modification, if we had some direction in that regard, I think we could come back and have a meaningful discussion and maybe vet that to whatever direction you gave us to both of the parties that have testified here tonight.
So he's looking to us, folks, to try to give direction. And again, it certainly means that we can ask him to pull it together and then table tonight until we have the final wording in front of us. But I think the important piece of this is, again, it comes back to, just as Kathy was talking, how many nights are we going to look at for consideration of this request? And as well, the other one issue is the exit in case of an emergency, which, I don't know, personally, I think that is one of those things that if it's an emergency situation, it happened maybe once last year, I would have to agree that I'm going to go the direction that is best for me. But that's just me. So I don't know what your feelings are, folks, but.
Your Honor?
Yes.
On the exiting, I just would add, I just spoke with Chief about those potentials, perhaps Mr. Signor would be open to putting a sign up saying in event of emergency, please exit to your right or east on that particular gate, because that gate's closed otherwise, and that would just help remind their exiting parties that they are encouraged to move to the east. But as far as directing traffic and putting actual civilians on the roadway, I don't think we want to be in a position to force that, and I don't think they have the authority to do that, and we don't allow our students in the street to direct traffic without some sort of law enforcement credential.
And I would have to agree with that. Excuse me. I think that's probably, when I asked the question, I made a proposal that maybe that's something that we see the law enforcement from the county, but I think that's actually a better suggestion is that we put up a recommended signage that says, we recommend in case of emergency that you make a right-hand turn, because there are the people anyway that, even though that sign's up there, if it were a legal sign and said no left-hand turns, I mean, how many, you just have to drive around the city of Norfolk and see how many times we see cars coming the wrong way on one-ways because they choose so, making left-hand turns when they aren't supposed to. So I think that gives us, and for to be bringing law enforcement out there or something to say, okay, you got to make this a right-hand turn only in a case of an emergency. Again, it's a case of a emergency, and I don't think we can define what a case of emergency is, because there's storms and there's everything else that occurs in this and I don't think anybody's really, that tied up on, we know when emergencies are. So I appreciate the suggestion that, we make the suggestion for a right-hand turn. Are people going to make a left, even though the sign says make a right-hand turn? That happens all the time. It happens. Chief just has the ability to ticket people for it, so.
Can I say something on that real quick? I would think if we're making a suggestion for someone to turn right and they get into a wreck, and they come back and say, hey, I was suggested to turn this way and I got hurt and somebody's got a broken neck, and then they're gonna hire an attorney, and then they're gonna come at me and I'm gonna say, well, this body suggested to put a sign, and it gets a little, my mind a little.
And I would like to respond to that.
I'll if it's suggested to put up a sign, I'll put up a sign, but I still think we're leaving some room for some liability.
I think we're drawing at straws there and creating a worst-case scenario.
Yes.
And so I can't agree with you that, when you open your gates, you're opening it up to somebody to sue you regardless. I mean, that's just the way civil litigation is nowadays, but I have no problem with that suggested sign.
I guess as far as what's before us tonight, we would have to, I think, given the discussion, and I think everybody in agreement, the overture of off-road to withdraw from the request for Sunday racing, we would have to look at version C. It would be a modification of what the Planning Commission previously approved. And I think what I'm hearing in general discussion from what Clint said, that we may not be ready at this point in time to vote on version C, a modification, without cleaning up some language in reference to the emergency exit and what those special nights, additional special nights of racing really mean, and the definitions of super late model racing versus racing without mufflers. Clint, is that a fair assessment of what you said?
That's correct, Councilman. If you want to tell us to give you some of the options based on what we heard for version C, we can come up with some of those and let you wrestle with, come back and let you all wrestle with them.
Do you not, within the group, do we not need to have some kind of a consensus on nights? 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights?
I would suggest that, Your Honor, because otherwise we're going to be,
Right.
as staff, going to be fuddling with what number to put in there. If
Right.
you guys would suggest, we'll clean up the conditional use permit and then get it back on the agenda. But we really need to know
What-
2, 3, 0, 1. We need.
The other view of that, Shane, is that it's really easy for us to write something with a blank that you all put in 1, 2, 3, or whatever. So I mean, however you want us to do it, we can do it, I think.
I thought we were approving what was presented before us from the Planning and Zoning Committee. So nobody asked for nights to be erased off of this? They just asked for clarification on, are they adding 2 nights of racing, or are they adding racing within the schedule that they currently have? This says, it sounds like they're adding 2 more nights of racing to their current schedule, which obviously wasn't what they were asking. They're asking to add 2 special races with no mufflers during their schedule.
Right.
And we already have 1 that is allowed during their schedule. That's just being, so I'm not so
Okay.
sure why you want to put a blank there. It's already being asked and said in this, it's just not stated properly. It's-
Yeah, when you say races or heats, I know the word heat was
Well,
mentioned,
and it should probably say heats.
1.
Yeah, instead of races.
Additional special nights of racing. With these
Would that be, would heat be more accurate, Mr. Sidney? Or class would be more accurate.
Rob just did bring it to my attention. It does say regularly scheduled
Right.
race night. So,
When we wrote that stuff last year and dealt with it, one of the things about the special races I recall was that the thing that didn't change, even with the introduction of the special race, was the timeframes that were already there. I mean, you were still within the timeframes of you start at this time and you end at this time. So there already are some outside parameters. So we can get you something, and I think that we probably could have done a better job last year when we wrote that, is making it clear that it's not, I mean, it talked about there may be 1 super late model race. I don't know what we did. We could come up with something better that maybe describes the practicality, that it's not just a whole night of racing with that different class. It's a substitution of a class. I think that's one of the things we'd like to spruce up a little bit if given the opportunity.
A little specificity on the additional 2 nights, what they would be.
Special nights is not necessary, yeah, special classes, special whatever, but I get it.
Yeah,
I see where you're going.
I think we can clarify that. Go ahead.
I think we can clarify that. I think we're all right. All we're asking for is 3 nights during the racing season, 3 nights during the racing season that, during a regular racing season, that one class can run without mufflers. Of the 5 classes running, that night, one class can run without mufflers. We won't have to say super late model, sprint cars, 4 cylinders, stock cars. One class, 3 nights to run without mufflers. That's all it has to be asked for. That's all we're asking for. Again, I'll reiterate and say one more time. We're asking for 3 nights. Last year we had 1. We're asking for 3 nights of racing that one of our 5 classes can run without mufflers.
Understood.
One point of clarification on that, and it's just because I heard what I was hearing from the council up here. One class can run without mufflers. How many races that night does that entail?
That class will run 2 races.
Okay,
That class will run 1 heat and 1 feature. That class will run 1 heat and 1 feature. 1 heat and 1 feature.
so what I'm hearing then,
Each car will run 1 heat and 1 feature of that class.
okay, so if I broke it down to special races, if, you know, flag drops and checker flag comes down to end it, I'm talking 2 times 3. 1
Two
heat
races.
and
And the feature.
and the feature.
Each car
So
will
that's,
participate in 1 heat and 1 feature.
Okay.
It depends upon number of cars.
well, okay, that's what I was asking. I asked races.
Okay, maximum last year, the maximum we had with our open class with no mufflers was we had 3 heats and 1 feature.
Okay, so you had.
So that's
4 races.
You had 4 races.
4 races. 24 total cars.
I don't care how many cars, just need to know how many races.
We had 3 heats of 8 laps, which is 24, and 1 feature of 25. So we had a total of 48 total laps that class runs with no mufflers. And if we have less cars, we run less heats.
So then my question is, and ultimately, how many heats could I anticipate maximum out? You know, that's our concern, is how many, you know, the number of heats dictates the number of total races, actually.
Number of heats will reiterate by how many cars we have.
Right.
Last year we had 24.
So-
This year, the maximum we would probably ever run would be 4 heats and 1 feature. So the maximum we'd ever run is 32 laps for the heats and 25 laps for the feature. That's probably the maximum we'd ever run for the But you can't put that in your use permit because then we can't dictate how many cars we're gonna have. You know what I'm
Well-
saying? I mean, we don't know how many's coming in.
Actually, you could, because that just limits it at the number of cars that you can have.
Right.
If you aren't gonna run more than,
I'm gonna tell my 360s, no, I can only have 24 cars, the rest you gotta stay home.
either 24, or if you're, because you said maximum would be 4.
Or we
Yeah.
could go back
Well,
to
I
the
think
original agreement
Yeah.
and just, you know,
Don't let it get complicated.
I'm not, it
Thank
won't get complicated. It could be 1 or more heats.
That's scary.
It's same as what we already can do. It's what we could, we want more cars. We could bring more cars on that night is better for the facility and it's better for the community. More cars. We want more cars. So if we do if X amount of cars, last year, like he said, we had 3 heats and 1 feature. Depends on the amount of cars you get. I mean, it would be wonderful to have even more, but, I mean, are we there? No. So I would personally, Clint, how I'd worry is just be 1 or more heats with a feature. Don't know how many heats. Don't know how many heats any night for any class. That's something we can't predict. Nobody can. No, I mean, we can't, I don't know. No one knows.
The thing that you can predict, though, is the hour of operations.
Yes, and will always fall within the hours of operation, yes. Absolutely. And that's why we are eliminating basically the same amount of cars, which is the late model class. It's comfortably going to be similar. We got to stick with that time, like you said, Jim. We got to stick with that time. So that's one or more heats, one feature. But I don't know if that needs to be even included in there. I think what needs to be included there, like Jerry's saying, is whether those 3 nights, that one class, mufflers or no mufflers. We're allowed to run without mufflers for those 3 classes.
And I'd just like to clarify, I wasn't pressing that I would get a number of heats that you were having or anything, but I was hearing comments saying 1 race or 2 races or 3 races, and the number of races, you know, the race is a green flag to the checkered flag, in my understanding of what a race is.
Correct. The verbiage in the cup should probably read 1 or more heats, because we don't know how many we're going to have, and 1 feature, which allows us not to run with mufflers.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I thought you said earlier, every car was in a feature. No?
No. You run your heats to get those into the feature.
And there's only 1 feature?
1 feature.
So,
Per class.
Right.
Per class.
But since there's only the one class, the one special class, there's only 1 feature of the
special.
vehicles that are special without the mufflers.
Okay.
Any other questions, any other clarifications? Okay, thanks, Kevin. Pardon me?
I'm not even sure where we're at this point, but
Well,
I think we have to, I think the decision tonight is on the number of race nights we're going to allow cars without mufflers. Fair?
That's my understanding, too.
And the original agreement, which we had a lot of discussion on a little more than a year ago, when we talked about this, allowed for 1.
Right.
And now, a year into it, after we'd been asked to approve a waiver additionally, we're being asked to modify that agreement and allow for more. I think the opponents of this do have a valid question as to when is this going to stop? You know, what's to say there's not going to be another request in 6 months? And I don't blame Kevin at all for, you know, trying to accommodate his business needs. By all accounts, he's provided a service to the community that there was certainly a need for. But generally, in my opinion, just in theory and practice, when we pass these conditional use permits that are for 10-year agreements, I don't like to see this kind of tinkering with them, especially in such a short amount period of time. That's where I'm at on it. And if we're saying we have to make a decision on number of nights tonight, you know, I'm not making the motion now, but I would move for version C, and that simply addresses the emergency exit.
He's not making the motion, so
Just
any
for
other
discussion.
discussion?
Just for discussion.
Yeah?
I think since we got the emergency thing kind of figured out, and we don't have Sundays, I think we either clean it up and bring it back next time with the amount of days being 3, or we fix it tonight. But I think we should take it out, clean it up, bring it back the way it's gonna read, and then vote on it that way. And I would suggest the 3 that they're asking for with what we've got.
Is that a motion or is still
That
discussion?
is a motion.
Okay.
Is
So you're saying
is the motion to table?
Yeah,
Is that a
basically
mo- is that
tabling
your
it, cleaning
motion
it
to
up
table?
with using it 3, bringing it back next time and voting on what we've cleaned up. No Sundays, 3 races, with.
3 nights of,
Three races without mufflers.
Right.
For just that class.
Have we closed the public hearing?
yes.
Okay.
And the exit? And the exit?
And
Well, that would be decided in conversation with the staff. I mean, the motion right now is simply to table this tonight.
Yeah,
Right.
Dave
So that- I
suggested
think
the
that
table.
they think
I'll second your
everything is
motion
figured
to
out,
table.
and you guys discuss whether it's with a sign or without a sign, or recommend with the safety issue, which direction we go with that.
I'll second
Clean it
your
up
motion.
and then bring it back.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do you understand, Beth? Do you have it all? Okay, all right. I just want.
This is essentially a tabling vote.
Yes, yes, to table. It will come back before. We'll ask our city staff to pull together what it is that they've heard, and you will have the ability then to hear the final. So, with that being said, I would ask for your vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, motion to table carries.
Okay, I have learned more about racing tonight than, obviously, I got a long way to go too, so. I appreciate everybody's input on this. Thank you very much. And again, you will know when it appears on the city council again in the near future, so. Okay. Let's go on to Mr. Randy Gates, who's been most patient here. He's going to talk a little bit about our January sales tax report.
So there we go. Geez. Oh, laptops.
You run out of battery.
Yeah, I was going to say, he got it on though all the while waiting to get up here, and now no battery.
I guess I don't even need to really have this in front of me. You've got in your agenda packets the January sales tax report, which is November sales. And you'll see we're down substantially from the same month the prior year. And as I've been saying, every time I come up here for the last 4 or 5 months, that's because of the June 3rd, 2014 hailstorm. We started getting significant increases in sales tax starting September of 2014, and that continued on for a period of months. I expect we'll be seeing another couple months where we'll see substantial decreases in our sales tax from the prior fiscal year. We anticipated that at the time we put our budget together. We knew when we were getting those increased revenues in that was because of the hailstorm. We put our budget together, we anticipated that. We did not budget. We knew we had artificially high revenues prior year. We budgeted going back to normal revenues this year. And that's what's happening. That's what's driving those decreases in sales tax you're seeing in the sales tax report. And as I said, you'll probably see a couple more months of that. We budgeted for that. We adjusted our expenditures in the budget for that. So we're coming in right where we expected to be. We were 2 months high so far this fiscal year and 2 months under budget. We're almost exactly on budget at this point in time. I think we're like $1,500 over budget so far. Answer any questions.
That budget month that we're talking about is November sales?
Yeah, it's the receipts we got in January, which is primarily November sales.
November sales. So we're anticipating December and
December, I
January
expect will
being
still
down.
be coming down substantially. I would expect less decrease the next month, and then I expect we'll be starting to level out and get back to normal after that.
So at about April's report, you come in for February sales?
Yes.
February
I
sales tax?
expect we'll be getting back to more looking like we should and won't be having these wide decreases from the prior year to this year.
Any other questions for Randy?
I know this kind of seems like business as usual when we go through this, but this actually is extremely important what Randy's talking about. I think there has been some concern with the public, wondering if we did budget, when we set our budget last year, if we did take into account that we were going to, probably see a reduction in sales tax. So I just like to reiterate, I guess
Yeah.
either add to what you're trying to say or just say that That was taken into account, and as we've spent these Keno dollars recently,
Right.
I know some people raised some questions about that, and, you know, we're deferring some of our other projects until that is paid back. But it is really important that people realize that it was based off a conservative number for sales tax. You know, when you arrive at that number, I know you do historical figures to get to where you need to be, and it's not just off the previous year, each year when we set our budget. So, thanks, Randy. Thanks for being conservative on this.
Yeah. Exactly.
Also, to your point, Councilman, we also triage our capital expenditures too, as far as establishing A, B, and C priority. So we're, for lack of better words, leave some of our powder dry in case we see continued drop in sales, tax receipts, and revenues in general. So that's another thing we guard against. I know there has been some discussion in social media about whether administration accounts for that or adjusts the budget for that, and we do that at the beginning of the budget year, every year.
Okay. No further questions for Randy. Thank you very much. Next is consideration of approval of ordinance number 5377, amending section 24-164 of the official city code to restrict parking on the south side of McKinley Avenue.
Your Honor, I would move consideration of ordinance number 5377.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Who's speaking to this, Dennis?
Yes. We're trying to improve safety down on McKinley. When we get parking on both sides of the street, the traveled way gets awful narrow there. We're also making some improvements on the south side of the street. We're putting a new trail in there. We're also trying to grade the ditch to get better drainage, so we don't want people driving in that south ditch and messing up some of that stuff. So we would recommend that we take the parking off of the south side. We're also going to put some signs up, and that will be from 5th Street to the west. 5th Street East is on the county road, so that will still have parking allowed there. It's not a through street, but we will put up some signs to prevent parking on either side of the crosswalk that we've got going between the two youth complexes over there east of 5th Street. We have also gone in and looked at those parking lots and are going to put up some delineation so that we get better parking within those parking lots, so that right now we've got one row of cars parked and great big wide aisles. Gonna get 2 rows of cars parked, some narrower aisles. We've laid that out, and once we get the trail in this spring, the crews will go in and get those delineations completed. They're doing delineation on the new parking that we put in by the youth complex on the north side of McKinley. And then also there'll be parking between the horseshoe pits and field 3, I think it is, of this adult soft complex, so that there's ample parking out there. We just don't have enough parking for everybody to park at the front door.
So Dennis, you're saying with that delineation, there's not a net loss or a net gain in parking, it's about the way it is now?
It should be in the adult complex and the youth complex, and then we'll pick up stalls over there east of the field, or west of field 3, between 4 and 3.
Okay, thank you.
So if you're at the baseball complex, for the kids complex, the Little League complex, and that's slam-packed full, and you cannot park on the south side anymore, are you saying you have to go park over by the softball fields?
You'll end
and
up
walk
over.
all the way down there?
That's what'll have to happen.
Be a lot of people walking.
That's good.
We got a nice, we'll have a nice trail for them. We'll have a nice trail for them.
Okay, you tell that to the young moms out there.
I agree with Shane. There's a lot of people parking that ditch, and it's gonna be a long walk, and we do need to improve parking out there, because when the kids are playing, girls softball's playing, adults are playing, horseshoes going on, it's packed, and there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So we gotta start addressing that. We're gonna have some land where we can work on that, but we may need more, so we need to look at that.
But I think this starts the matter of addressing it, and, you know, I hear, okay, it's going on because we've got softball, we've got little kids baseball, you know, those are all people that sometimes don't pay the greatest attention and aren't seen real well. So when you have poor parking in ditches and poor lines of sights, that's when you get somebody hurt. So even though I may have to walk a little bit further, I think if you start thinking about it, ultimately, it's probably the best thing. One, it's good to walk a little bit further, personally, but think about the life or the injury that you're preventing by having better lines of sight, so.
That's the calls I was getting too. It was a safety issue. You get the cars parked there and little kids are still darting out between the cars to get to the fields or whatever, so it is a safety
You guys
issue.
say, in my opinion, though, is the safety issue is more on the north side by where the kids come out, where the cars park there to go to the concessions, because all the concessions are on the south side. So little kids at the ball fields, when you're sitting there watching your kid and you've got a 7 or 8 year old goes, can I have a couple dollars to go buy at the concession? Sort of happens to everybody here. And you let them go, they dart through there. Where the parking we had on the north side, you couldn't see them if you're coming back. And that was where,
We're gonna deal
that was
with
where the concern I had. I didn't,
With that as well, parking staff can, our park staff can open up that throat more.
Yeah.
So you have, so that there's better line of sight, the triangle sight, line of sight is better and more open. on
I've
the
never
north
had
side
anybody
as well.
complain about parking on the south side where having say, I mean, the complaints have come to me about just right in that
The
area.
south side is actually west of there though, Councilman. Where we're
Yeah.
taking it off is west of there,
West, going from,
from Fifth Street west
okay,
on McKinley.
yeah.
We're
not
gonna,
east.
Yeah, so you'll still be,
we're going to.
part of that you'll then be, go ahead.
We're going to try to open up some additional site where that crossing is between the,
Yeah.
where the baseball is, without taking parking off of basically probably either side of the street right in that area. But we will have about a car length on either side of that walk through there that says no parking between signs.
Now, when we do move the parking, now, if I'm getting this right, the parking is going to be moved west because it's coming off the south side. So you'll be parking towards the west, then you'll be walking east to those ball fields. Okay. Now we talked about that. Would the trail be completed before we take the parking out?
The trail, yes, well,
I think that would be something we'd want to juggle because if you've got a stroller and you load that up, you're going to have to walk on, you can't push those through grass. You're going to have, and then you're going to hit, you hit that gravel and that thing just sinks in the gravel. So you want to maintain some sort of path all the way to those fields if we're asking these guys to walk.
Contractor has his screed out there for pouring that, and he's have some of it is poured already, so.
But do
I'm
we
going
wanna-
to assume that he's gonna, as soon as the weather breaks, he's gonna be able to finish the rest of that trail. Now, I think there's probably a deadline in there that he may, in theory, be able to move all his resources off that site and go somewhere else. But his resources are there currently, and I imagine he's gonna finish that project and move on.
So in order to finish the trail, you got to move the parking, is what you're saying.
the parking can't be there while we're
Right
doing
in
the
the
trail
way.
work anyhow, and we're going to be putting a sewer line down that same south side. So we've got lots of things going on in that south ditch already that will prevent parking in there. And if they're parking along the ditch or the south side, they're walking down the street with their stroller now.
I know, but now we're walking a lot further, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, we've got, parking down there is going to be something we're going to have to address moving forward. And hopefully we just have a plan, as we've talked about other land, Dave mentioned that, we can address some of the parking, because parking is an issue there.
Well, I think,
Just by deferring it down the road, I don't think that helps the issue.
I think the delineation in those parking lots will improve it a lot. I mean, right now, we're probably going to have a net gain of usable parking spots. We're not going to have a net gain of parking spots. We're going to have a net gain of usable parking spots because folks now are taking 2 parking stalls just because there's no way to, you got a big gravel lot and the first guy comes in and if they don't start in the right spot, they end up taking more space than they need, so.
We do have that, we are purchasing that land that Councilman Fowles is talking about. We're just close to having it closed. There's some potential there, but that's further west as well.
Right.
Yeah, but
As
it's
the
not.
park expands, there may be other opportunities in the future to gain more ground down there, perhaps in the future. That's long term.
All right. Any more discussion here on this? All right, if none further, do we have a short on this, Beth?
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend Section 24-164 of the official city code to restrict parking on the south side of McKinley Avenue from the east city limits to the west end of McKinley Avenue, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
And with that, I would ask that you vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5377 carries on first reading.
Okay? See-
I would move that we suspend the rules and pass this on second and third.
There has been a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, motion and a second that we suspend the rules.
I would almost like to see some sort of laid out plan on how people are gonna be moving from one area to the other. So we can have that, you know.
Would you like to see a map or a drawing of it?
Yeah.
We can put a drawing together that includes the trail and the layout there and where parking would be taken off on the south side.
And parking we're adding by cleaning up that lot.
Yeah, we're just delineating the parking, so hopefully people will respect the
That's what I'm talking
delineation.
about, by how it actually
So
lays
that,
out.
that should help because it'll, you know, of the willy-nilliness that's going on now. We can produce that map if that's something the council wishes.
Okay, Shane, so are you suggesting,
That we have a map for next meeting we can look at.
okay, so we'll just pass on first reading and,
Well, the motion is.
yeah, okay, yep, okay. I'm sorry, I was thinking you made the second, no? Okay, all right, so you will vote on the motion.
Those in favor of suspension of the rules, council members Murin, Moaning, Faust, File, voting against, and Langy, and voting against suspension of the rules, Granquist, Merrill, and Clausen.
Okay, I see nothing further on the agenda.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
If I may, just quickly, just as another reminder to our folks watching out there, just with the forecast being as it is and the weather, it's just a good reminder to the community to even Steven snowplow. I have to say that for Diane, so she keeps me honest up here. And park on the even side of the streets tonight as we are in a snow emergency beginning at 5 p.m. this evening until further notice. And also just to be careful out there on the streets and be careful. Thank you.
Okay, just a reminder too that there is no planning commission meeting in the morning, assuming we're going to be seeing some white stuff to prevent that. So everyone